All this brings us to the potential for democratization. The duration of these regimes and the processes of democratization really vary by regime type. If you take Poly 4, I don't even know if it's got a number yet. I think it's just Poly 409, my democratization class, which will have a number sooner or later, and it may already. We'll get into this in much more detail. But just to give you a general idea of how this sort of fits into the grand scheme of things, when you look at military regimes, these tend to be quite short-lived. Probably the shortest lived of all three of these regime types. In fact, definitely the shortest lived, empirically speaking. The problem for military regimes is that the military is composed of a broad swath of society. And so military leaders are interested most of all in maintaining unit cohesion. And they're also very sensitive to popular opinion because they're composed of this broad swath of society. They tend to get disillusioned when their policies are very unpopular. And so they might be able to tolerate this for a little while. But as they become more and more unpopular, they tend to back out. And they move together so that when some return to the barracks, because they're so focused on unit cohesion, others are likely to follow them rather than face the division of their institution. And this is one of the weaknesses of military regimes, which makes them so short-lived. Remember, military regimes can also transform into other types, in particular personalistic regimes or single-party regimes, in which case they can be much longer living. Personalistic regimes tend to come next in this sort of totem pole of how long you're going to last. They last longer than military regimes because really the high opportunity costs of opposing the regime. If you're in that ruling circle, if you're in the winning coalition, what we call the winning coalition or the ruling circle, you're getting a lot of good stuff. And if you stand up against that leader, you try to launch a coup, then there are very high risks involved. One, you might lose getting all that stuff, and well, you're gonna risk that. And two, you're probably gonna risk your life. So the opening in personalistic regimes is most likely when a leader dies, since rulers rely on informal and unstable personal networks, which have a high likelihood of falling apart as people struggle for the top position following the death of that leader. It doesn't mean that a personalistic regime is going to end when that person dies. Someone else could consolidate power quickly and take up the reins, him or herself. It means this is where there's an opening. Party regimes tend to be the most durable of all these. There are many people with an interest in maintaining the regime, often at various levels, from those at the top who get their summer villas to those at the bottom who, as a result of participating in the regime, get their extra food rations or cigarettes or whatever sort of piddly little things they get. But they're all co-opted. They all have a stake in the regime. So when you have fragmentation, people are more likely to wait it out rather than risk bailing unsuccessfully. In other words, if I see that John over there is trying to walk away from the regime, trying to lead a coup or something, well, I'm probably going to Gettys uses a great metaphor where people gather around the prey and they encircle the prey. And if one of the people falls loose from our circle, well, we're gonna close tighter around that circle so that the prey doesn't escape. The prey being the state. And so this is what's going to happen. Now, these do tend to end when a certain segment of elites see this declining utility of staying in the system. The system doesn't seem like it's paying off anymore. For example, the system's no longer delivering what it promises to deliver to those people who are involved in it, or popular disaffection makes it likely that defection will actually succeed. So getting out of this circle will actually succeed, and that loyalty will not pay off in the long run because other people are going to defect and and the system is going to end whether you like it or not. So party regimes do tend to be the longest running of all of them. Now, some challenges to democratization, and again, this is just an overview to give you a little taste of what you can find in the democratization class, and to give you some idea of the context for all this stuff that I've given you today. Collective action problems are spurred on by coercion and co-optation. Regime change, you have to remember, is a collective good. Everybody wants regime change to a certain degree. Not everybody, because there's that small group within the winning coalition who help govern or who receive dividends from governance. But a majority of society wants regime change, but no one wants to actually pay the price for this. Some because they're being co-opted, and some, and most others, probably just because of the high potential risks, the costs of getting involved in regime change. You can get thrown in jail for being an activist. You can be tortured. You can be killed. Now, this is actually alleviated as the risks of repression or the benefits of the system decline, which alters the utility of loyalty, makes it so that it's not as fruitful to be loyal anymore. And there can be a cascade effect. The catalyst is often failed economic policies where a few people turn their backs, and then as more and more people turn their backs, you say, hey, it doesn't seem like they're getting in trouble, or there's only so much the regime can do to 1,000 of us. Sure, they could go and arrest 100 of us if we gather in a square, but if there are 1,000 of us, if there are 10,000, a million, and so the potential risks begin to fall, and people move out. So there's often a catalyst involved here. There are huge institutional questions, though, of what sort of system to adopt, the democratic mechanisms that are going to be involved. Other important questions about how to relate to the past, the role of the old regime actors in the new state. You might need their expertise, for example, but how do you deal with abusers and those complicit from the past regime in human rights abuses? Questions about political culture. These are regimes where you had a lack of respect for the rule of law within society. And then you've also got very high expectations of the democratic system. There are expectations that everyone's going to turn into a wealthy, a wealthy democratic citizen overnight, and that's just not the way it works. It takes much more time for these things to happen, and oftentimes democracy is not the best way to wealth, which is another question altogether, which we address in the democratization class. So we'll stop there.